Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
And I'm Roland Pulis.
And today we have made it to episode 41, and it is all about Unforgiven 2004.
At what point do you stop counting the episodes? Like in your head, you know what I mean? Like do you get to a year and say, okay, we've done 52 and we're done and it's just this episode? I don't know. But it is crazy to think that we've gone like, 9 months, 10 months or so?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully more than two of you are listening and liking what we're doing. I mean, we're having fun doing it, but yeah, we've made it to episode 41. It's, I've mentioned before, it's a crazy number when you sit back and think about, starting out where we started out, I think. So
yeah, absolutely, and I think we've gotten a lot better as the episodes have gone on,
too. We persevered through the COVID stuff. I mean, we had some episodes where we used Skype and we couldn't see each other. We kind of rambled over each other, and then we went to Zoom, which worked better, but it's still, I mean, this is the second episode in a row where we've been together recording it again, which I think is probably our best chemistry.
Yeah.
Is, when we're kind of laughing at each other while we're talking and whatever, we kind of know when we're going to stop. So thanks for bearing with us, and I hope you guys are digging what we're doing.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. There's 8 matches to discuss on Unforgiven 2004. This took place on September 12th, 2004, so today is the 16th anniversary of this show.
I would have just graduated high school in June of that year.
I would have been in 7th grade.
I graduated in June of 2004, so yeah. It's a little while ago.
It's a little while ago.
Yeah.
So you have one match on Heat. You have Maven, your first ever Tough Enough winner, getting a win over Chuck Palumbo in about 4 minutes and 45 seconds. This match probably wasn't anything spectacular, to be honest.
It was almost a 5-minute Heat match.
That's true.
I mean, it must have been something halfway decent, I guess. But, I mean, Maven was never anything special. No offense to Maven. And Chuck Palumbo was always thought to be something, but never really panned out. He had the look. I think the most notable thing he did was the whole Billion Chuck thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he was the Undertaker before the Undertaker was the Undertaker on a motorcycle with Michelle McCool and stuff, which is kind of funny. But they tried different gimmicks with him, even in WCW, and they just never really panned out. But he had a good look, and he wasn't a terrible wrestler. He never really connected with the fans.
Yeah.
Same with Maven, though. I mean, they pushed the heck out of him when he won Tough Enough, and no one really cared.
No one cared. I don't know what he's doing now. I think he might be a school teacher or something. But
maybe Matt Stryker knows.
Maybe. So we kick off the actual pay-per-view with a tag team match. You have Chris Benoit and William Regal getting a win over Evolution's Batista and Ric Flair by submission in about just over 15 minutes. I think it was a pretty solid opener. I think William Regal and Chris Benoit actually make a pretty good tag team.
It's a weird combination, but yeah, they make a pretty good team. They're both two physical workers.
They're scrappy.
Yeah, there you go. And again, same thing. Well, the Benoit disclaimer that I know some people probably still have an issue with watching Benoit matches, but I'm not saying this is one you have to watch.
No,
but it wasn't a bad match.
No, I thought so. And Ric Flair can still hold his own at this point, I think, in his career.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who is probably in his mid 50s, mid to late 50s at this point, because he's 73, 74-ish now.
Yeah.
So, he was 58-ish, I would say, if I had to guess off the top of my head. He, for a guy that his age, he was still taking bumps and doing well in the ring, and Batista was still green, but very good at what he did physically, obviously. But yeah, weird combination of Benoit and Regal, and some of that was because they broke Eugene's arm or shoulder, or whatever. Triple H did that the week before on Raw, and then Eugene was going to be out forever, supposedly. His career was over. And that's another character, too. I mean, Nick Dinsmore did a hell of a job with that Eugene character.
Probably not something you can get away with today.
No, having someone who's on the spectrum, I guess is the nicest way to put it, as a wrestler, and kind of exploiting that, would not go over very well today at all. I mean, just like the Hurt Business. Cheap plug to me for calling that from last week, that Cedric Alexander was going to join them. But, I mean, you don't see them. They're pretty much the second coming of the Nation Domination.
Yeah.
And they're just not being called that because it wouldn't go over very well, especially with the Black Lives Matter stuff and all that stuff right now.
I think MVP turned it down. I think there was an offer to do that.
Well, that's why they brought Ron Simmons back.
Yeah.
Originally, he was going to be the heater to start that whole thing, and him and Mark Henry, actually, from what I read, and they were like, no, let's not do that. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, team-wise, it's not, but the concept right now, you can't go back to a concept 20-something years ago and have it work. I mean, look at, every time they've tried to reinvent either the Rockers or the Midnight Express or whoever, it just never works.
No.
But I like what they're doing with the Hurt Business, and again, I know this is a sidebar, but you can't... a lot of the wrestling fans are nostalgic anyways, so it doesn't hurt to go back to that, but you can't base it solely off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So... and I think that, like you said, the Eugene character would just not go over well at all today. He was Eric Bischoff's
nephew.
Yeah,
right?
Uncle Eric.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the backstory of the Benoit thing. He had a feud with Randy Orton and Triple H, and that was the story of how Randy Orton actually beat Benoit and Triple H couldn't. So that's why he was in there, as So it was all put together. It made sense once they kind of explained it. But you see them come out, and you're like, why is Benoit teaming with William Regal?
Yeah.
But I'm glad they tied it together. And yeah, it was a pretty good match to start the show.
Next up was a singles match for the WWE Women's Championship. You have Trish Stratus with the problem solver, Tyson Tomko, getting a win over Victoria in about 8 minutes and 21 seconds. I thought this was a solid women's match, especially considering the time it was in. Women's wrestling obviously wasn't where it is today. So for them to actually get over 8 minutes, I think was pretty significant back in this time frame. So I thought they did pretty well. Victoria, I think, is pretty underrated. You don't think of her as one of the best wrestlers, female wrestlers of all times or anything like that. But I think she was a solid hand.
Yeah.
And I think she performed well.
Yeah, and another thing that wouldn't go over too well nowadays, the whole slut angle
Yep.
thing with Trish Stratus. That literally perfect segue from the Eugene character to calling Trish a slut.
Yep.
Something else that really wouldn't go over too well. And that's actually why Tomko was with Trish, because she convinced him to go out there and whispered something in his ear that he would let her do in the locker room later, I guess, supposedly. And then that was when Christian said, "Oh, I guess she really is a slut." And it's like, oh. And they were chanting that at one point in the match. It's like, oh boy, this is not good. Two things right in a row that just would not age well.
No, did not age well at all.
But yeah, no, a solid match. Trish has always been for someone who was never technically a wrestler. Like she didn't start out as a wrestler. She was a model. Mm-hmm. And I think she's probably one of the best success stories for someone who trained to becoming a wrestler later on in her career and actually was a damn good wrestler.
Yeah.
And Victoria definitely, wherever she went, whether it was TNA as Tara or in WWEF as Victoria, definitely one of the more solid wrestlers, probably in kind of like the Mickie James, Natalya category now. Somebody that you can put with and have a good match no matter who it really is. But yeah, it was for, like you said, 8 minutes at the time. That's a lot of time for a women's match when usually the women's matches are strip the other opponent and but yeah, it was a good wrestling match. It really was.
Yeah. Then after the match, Tyson Tomko introduces a open challenge, and it's answered by Steven Richards, who's dressed up as a lady here.
Yeah, this was the crazy stalker gimmick.
Yeah.
I guess supposedly. Steven Richards came out at the end of the match and attacked Tomko. And then he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to solve this mystery, get out here. And, I mean, everybody was chanting who it was anyways from the get-go. There was your bra and panties match, apparently.
Yeah.
So,
with Steven Richards.
Yeah.
Think of that one.
Yeah, it was not... at one point, Jerry the King of Law even said, they're granny panties, JR. So, yeah, I don't know what they were trying to accomplish per se there. But yeah, he called her cross-dressing hermaphrodite. He called Steven Richards. Tomko did over the microphone to get him to come back out. And,
again, another thing that you probably can't say today.
Yeah, no, it's stacking up pretty heavy in a we can't do this today PC politically correct stuff. Yeah, you had the quote unquote retarded Eugene, and then you had the slut angle, and then you had the cross-dressing hermaphrodite. It just kept going. It snowballed into some ugly stuff that would not age well. It doesn't age well, and it would not be able to be pulled off today. There's no way. Some of the stuff that and this isn't even like the Attitude Era really anymore. It's kind of after it. So to see some of this stuff, it was definitely cringeworthy, I guess is the best way to put it. And yeah, it wasn't much of a match. Tomko pretty much kicked his ass for 6 minutes.
Yep.
It's really all that happened.
That's all it was.
Yep.
Things do get a little bit better, though, in our next match. You have a ladder match for the vacant Intercontinental title. You have Chris Jericho getting a win over Christian. Plenty of time here, 22.5 minutes. Solid match here. I thought it was a really good ladder match. A lot of crazy stuff. There's a spot where Christian was dangling from the cable that holds the belt up for a while and took a nasty fall. And plenty of crazy, typical ladder match stuff. But I thought they really had good chemistry. I thought they did really well with this one.
Jericho took one too, where he kind of got the ladder up the ass.
Yeah.
To quote him afterwards, his coach is interviewing him after the match, and he asked him how he felt. He's like, "I got a ladder up my ass." What do you think I felt? But yeah, he took the same kind of bump where he was hanging, and when he came down the ladder, he got it between the cheeks. Put it that way.
Yep.
It looked uncomfortable, and then they kept trying to say, "Oh, he got it in his lower back." It's like, no, it was all butt. There was no back there. It was a pretty physical match. And it was all because Edge had to vacate the title.
Mm-hmm.
He had torn his groin, and they vacated the title because he was going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. And this is where they went with it. So after the segment with Jericho, Edge actually kind of crashes that, and they said that they're going to face each other down the road. So it's surprising they didn't go with Christian just because of the history between Edge and Christian.
Yeah.
So that would have told the story too, but they had an idea where they wanted to go, and they went. And like I said, it's hard knowing how real certain things are. Obviously, Edge was hurt. We don't know to what extent exactly, if it was true that he tore it, or if he was just, or if this was some. I mean, obviously he was hurt, but how much was storyline? How much was he actually injured?
Yeah,
or whatnot. But probably the best match on the card to this point, I would say. Was,
absolutely.
Not that the first match was a pretty good match too, and even the women's match was pretty good. The only match that wasn't that good was the beating of the hermaphrodite, the cross-dressing hermaphrodite. And again, I'm quoting Tomko, so don't get mad at me. I'm just quoting Tomko. That's what he called Steven Richards. Send your hate tweets to Tim, not me. But yeah, no, it definitely made the show come back after the gaga of the Tomko Steven Richards beatdown.
Yes. And
definitely tied the show together well. It was a good match.
Absolutely. Next up, you have a no disqualification match. You have Shawn Michaels getting a win over Kane with Lita in about 18 minutes. I thought it was a really good match here. Shawn Michaels was coming. This was his first match back after, I believe, like a 3-month hiatus. I thought it was pretty solid. It was nice to see Kane in kind of a high-profile match. I kind of feel like a lot of times we've covered Kane on this show. He's always kind of been in a filler match.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of those throughout his career, but I think...
well, he's like Victoria. It's the same kind of thing. If you need a match, put somebody with Kane.
Yeah.
And that, which is good and bad. Mm-hmm. But, he was one of those guys that they believed in that could get a good match at anybody. Yeah. And a lot of times he succeeded. I mean, there's only a few times that... And then that was because it was a horrible opponent. Mm-hmm. But I mean, 9 times out of 10, if they needed somebody to have a match, on the card, and they threw him with Kane, it's Ziggler now. Ziggler's the same way now with WWF.
Yeah.
WWE at the time. Well, now. Ziggler's the same way. If you need to get a good match out of something, look at the matches he had with Drew McIntyre as filler. That's what it was. It was just filler to get it to the further the storyline with Orton and everything else. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, Shawn Michaels was out for 3 months. Kane put him on the shelf. And this is when Kane was married to Lita.
Yep.
Married to Lita. Matt Hardy lost the match, and they get married. Lita's the one that signed Shawn Michaels to this match.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was interesting to see her on the side cheering the whole time for Shawn. But yeah, it was a good match, and like you said, it's a high-profile match. I mean, this is probably the beginning of the main event. I know they have the tag match in between. But I would say the main event on this show was the Orton Triple H, and then the co-main event would have been this match.
Would have been this match, yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a very good match. I'm a Shawn Michaels mark anyways, so what are you going to do? But yeah, no, it was good. And like I said, it was interesting dynamic having Lita there. They were talking about they share custody of things, and she had just as much claim to it as Kane did. And
she was storyline pregnant too at this point.
Yes. The demon seed of Kane was
Yeah.
supposedly inside Lita. And this another thing that wouldn't age well.
No.
The whole Snitsky, it wasn't my fault. They're leading to that eventually because that happened shortly thereafter. And I mean, it's interesting to think that not only that, a little over a year after this, Christian's in TNA. Mm-hmm. I mean, he went in the fall of 05. So I mean, it's a lot of turnover, a lot of weird stuff happening here. But yeah, again, stuff that doesn't age well with the whole Snitsky, it's not my fault, miscarriage angle, which will happen.
Even just when Kane was going to the ring, just grabbing Lita by the arm,
dragging out afterwards, dragging her out, and forcing a kiss on her and everything, and then Jerry the King Lawler goes, "Wow, Kane goes in for a kiss, he makes a meal out of it." So it was definitely a little bit more stuff that definitely today people would kind of cringe at. It was good stories at the time. I mean, it was a good story, but it was definitely weird seeing Lita cheer for Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels bleeds in the match. Again, another thing you don't see much of today. If you bleed, usually it's the hard way nowadays. So, but very good match. Definitely, this match and the ladder match turned the whole pay-per-view up a notch. These two matches right in a row.
Absolutely. In the next match, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
The tag team match for the World Tag Team title. You have La Resistance getting a win over Rhino and Tajiri in 9 minutes and 40 seconds.
Might have been too long.
It might have been a little too long. I mean, I hate to say a title match was filler, but I think this is exactly what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you had the La Resistance. I mean, the flag thing is how the match ended.
Yeah.
Stupid. It was, again, just filler. Sylvain Grenier and Robert Conway. I think this is back when you had tag teams like Tajiri and Regal and Tajiri and Rhino and just guys that were kind of thrown together, and then Rob Conway and La Resistance and Sylvain Grenier, at least they were a team. I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't Benoit and Regal. Or it wasn't Regal and Tajiri, or Rhino and Tajiri, or Adam Page and Kenny Omega. It wasn't, so, I mean, that's one thing I will say is that at least they were a team. But, I mean, no one cared. No one cared about this match.
No.
Bad placement on the card, too. If you were going to put something in the middle there, you probably could have put I would have said you could probably put the women's match there if you wanted to. I think that would have been a little, because that was a good match.
Yeah.
But definitely weird placement. I don't know. I mean, you probably could have put the Evolution match there, too, if you had to. The match that started the show. But no one, after the Shawn Michaels Kane match, the people were there to see the Triple H Randy Orton match. So no one cared really.
Nobody cared.
There was no heat either way in this match. No one really cared, which is unfortunate because I'm a fan of Rhino, I'm a fan of Tajiri, and like I said, for the fact that La Resistance was an actual team, I'm a fan of that because I like tag teams. I don't like, we'll have this guy and we have a team. I'd rather have guys that are a team. The Usos, the New Day, how long they've been a team. They were thrown together to start, but I mean, teams nowadays that you think of that are teams. Cesaro might be the only exception to that because every team he has is a very good team.
Yeah. With Sheamus, now with Shinsuke.
Tyson Kidd before that. So, I mean, but very rarely do you see two guys get thrown together and have it work to the point where they have enough chemistry. I mean, even Adam Page and Kenny Omega, they seem to have a pretty good thing going. They were the champions for about a year in AEW. But usually when you throw two guys together, it doesn't work out and there's no traction. So nobody's invested in it. I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah. No, that's how I always feel. Like, nobody... It was just there.
Yeah. It was, like you said, it's hard to justify a World Tag Team Championship match being filler, but
that's what it was. Yeah. Well, now we get to our main event, which was a singles match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Randy Orton is going to lose his belt here to Triple H in about just under 25 minutes. Lots of gaga and shenanigans with this one. There's referee bumps. Then they send Evolution out.
There's coach in a ref shirt.
Coach in a ref shirt. Randy Orton's doing the best he can, but eventually Triple H hits him with a pretty significant chair shot to the head.
Yeah.
And a pedigree on the steel chair and gets the 1, 2, 3. Becomes I think at this point he was a 9-time champion back in 2004.
I think that's what they said, yeah.
So, but a solid match. I thought it was really good.
Up until the last 5 minutes. I mean, the match itself was great up until all that gaga. It was just too bad. I mean, you can have a finish. You can have a finish end that way, but you don't need that much gaga.
Yeah, it was excessive.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like a snowball. It just kept getting worse and bigger and bigger. The match itself was a great match up until that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate that that's the way they went with it. And that's how they booked it. Earl Hebner, like you said, takes a ref bump. Evolution shows up. Batista's there. Flair's there. Coach is there. You name somebody, it felt like they were there.
I know.
And it was one thing after another. And it was once that happened, it was kind of hard to follow. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I get it. That was the point. They wanted to have Triple H win the title back with some heat. So I get it. But
and it keeps Randy Orton in a good light too. It doesn't make him look bad by losing.
Yeah, you didn't bury him.
Yeah, you didn't bury him.
Right. So yeah, like I said, it's too bad because this match was a very good match up until that point.
Yeah,
still a good match, but it definitely took some away from it, unfortunately. And I'm a fan of having interference if it means something, which it did. It was just too kind of clustery, I guess is the best way to describe it. But it was a pretty good show altogether, and especially the ladder match and the Kane and Shawn Michaels match, and even this match, I think saved the show because after that first tag team match, there was a lot of just in the middle.
Yeah.
With the Tomko. So it's too bad too because the women's match was actually pretty good too. Mm-hmm. But the Gaga with Steven Richards and Tomko, and then the tag team champion match right before this kind of brought the card back down a little. But it was a Raw only show, so they only had so much they could do to fill a pay-per-view slot. Yeah. And that's one thing about the brand separations, that you're going to have some paper. I mean, we've looked up some shows and we read them and we're like, ooh, we don't want to do that one. Just because there's not as much there because it's just, the Undertaker and everybody else on the other show. Mm-hmm. So it just makes it hard to have a good show. And maybe if they'd been smarter, maybe made them a little shorter, it might have made, they wouldn't have needed, some of the filler.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, I would say it was probably a 6 for me. I don't know where you are on the...
Yeah, I was going to probably go 6.5 on this one. Yeah, I would definitely recommend the ladder match if you had to pick one match to watch.
Yep.
Out of the... But, if you have time, watch the Shawn Michaels Kane match and the Triple H Orton match.
Yeah, even, like I said, you can watch the first 2 matches, too, and not be upset about them. It's just... the filler in the middle with the Tomko filler and then that tag match filler. That, like I said, even the crowd, no one cared about that match at all.
No.
I mean, La Resistance came out doing their best to get heat, and no one gave a flying monkey's uncle about that whole match. No one cared about Jerry Rhino. That it just they at this point wanted the main event.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that's how they did it. So
that's our rundown of Unforgiven 2004. Again, took place 16 years ago today. Coming up for you guys next week, we're going to go back a couple more years to 1997 and cover WWF One Night Only. We'll give you kind of a quick preview as we have a couple minutes here.
Yeah, it was a show done over in the UK.
The
UK. So obviously you have the Bulldog being the flag bearer essentially for the UK. And actually at this time too, you also had Bret Hart was... Canada and UK loved Bret Hart too. The US hated him at this point, but so I would imagine him being on the card probably he was probably, even though he was against the Undertaker, they were probably pro Bret Hart at some point. But we haven't watched the show yet. But what do we got on the card, Tim?
Yeah, so we are gonna open up with Triple H. At this point, it's Hunter Hearst Helmsley with China and Dude Love. The real match that everybody wants to talk about is Tiger Ali Singh and Leif Cassidy. Who's Al Snow?
Yeah, I was gonna say if anybody doesn't know, look up who Leif Cassidy is. Yeah.
We also have the Headbangers defeating Los Boricuas, which were Miguel Perez Jr. and Savio Vega.
That should be a good. I mean, the Los Boricuas, I think, get a bit of a. They're overlooked because you had the DOA and you had the Nation at this time. They could go. I mean, they weren't big names other than Savio Vega, but they put on some pretty good matches. I'm looking for. I mean, it was a decent size. It was a pretty good long match. So I'm looking forward to that one a little bit. And this next match might surprise some people too.
Yeah, you have the Patriot and Flash Funk in singles action. Another tag team match after that. You have the Legion of Doom, Animal and Hawk, and the Godwins, which are Henry O and Phineas I. Godwin.
Get it, Hog and Pig.
Yeah,
back when you had occupational gimmicks in the WWF at the time.
Yep.
They were hog farmers that could also wrestle. Imagine that.
And then we have...
Business picks up from here on out.
Yeah, I think so. I think the last 3 matches are pretty strong here. You have Vader and Owen Hart. As we talked about, Bret Hart and The Undertaker. And a long match, too. Almost a half hour long.
That's for the WWF Championship.
That's for the WWF title, so... that might be a pretty good match. And then the European title closing a show, which is fitting because it's in the UK.
Yeah, and obviously the Bulldog is the big UK standout, so you want him to go on last anyways.
Yep. So you have Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog for the European title.
With DX.
With
Shawn
DX.
Michaels with China, Triple H, Rick Rude.
I'm looking forward to that one. That should be a really good match.
I think at this point too, Vader they had turned him face, if I remember right. I think this might be the time where they were starting, because they turned him face for a little while.
Yeah.
Which made no sense at all. Vader should never be a face ever, but he's facing Owen Hart, so I can't see Owen Hart. And again, we haven't watched this yet, so full disclosure, we're just kind of previewing it. I would venture to say that Owen Hart was probably the heel in that match.
I would think so.
I mean, they're in the UK. Maybe because he is a Hart, maybe they favor him too. For some reason, the Canadian wrestlers, UK guys always seem to like gravitate towards him at this time. Maybe that's because they were with the Bulldog too, like the Hart Foundation. But yeah, it should be interesting to see. Well, even the Legion of Doom, they're a big name. That they're probably over like Rover in UK in '97.
Yeah. So
like I said, this is going to be an interesting show. I mean, you have Triple H, you have Mick Foley, you got Shawn Michaels, you have the Legion of Doom, Owen Hart, Bret Hart. So there's some big names on this card.
A lot of big names on this show, and this was like I said, a UK only pay per view, so not a lot of people. We certainly get to see this. So we're gonna be watching this for the first time, and probably exposing it to you guys for the first time as well. So looking forward to going back and watching this one. Vince McMahon's on commentary for this one, so we're gonna count the times we hear what a maneuver.
That's true. Yeah. And this is actually probably one of my favorite trios too. Vince with Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. So, we'll see how like you said though, you'll probably hear a little bit of that, a little bit of the what a maneuver. Oh wow, look at that.
I've never seen that before and be a suplex.
Yeah. Double arm DDT. Dude Love hits one of them, the paradigm shift.
Yep.
And, oh, what a maneuver. It was a headlock, Vince. But yeah, we figured we had a little bit of time. The Raw, that when there's a split brand pay-per-view, it's hard to. They had trouble covering time, and so don't we, just because there's not much there.
Yeah.
But this show that we just covered from 2004, and this one that we're going back to for next week for episode 42 from '97, it's gonna be cool because, like you said, I don't know how much of these we've actually seen.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be cool to go back and watch that for the first time.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I like watching the '90s stuff. I think that's probably my favorite. Era, like the Attitude Era stuff, 96 to me, 99.
Yeah,
those are kind of the more fun shows for me to go back and watch. Not that these all aren't, but
and when we do podcasts in the future, like when we cover stuff from 2020, it's going to be tough because if it was at the Performance Center, we're probably going to do the same thing we're doing now and just skip it.
Yeah,
and that's just being honest. Is that with the crowd not being there, it's sometimes hard to watch.
Yeah, it is.
The AEW show this past weekend was nice. They had fans, and it made a difference. It really did. They weren't full by any means, but there was enough fans there to make a difference.
500 fans or something like that. Yeah.
Matt Hardy almost died.
Yeah, that was a scary fall.
Evan Bourne almost died, making his debut. Matt Seidel
with the Shooting Star Press.
Yeah, so but it makes a difference when you have fans, and like I said, when you have that brand split and you have to stretch the performers, it's harder to have a show. But like I said, next year if we have anniversary shows and we're still doing the podcast, knock on wood. Next year, if we're it's going to be hard to look back at the show from this year because we're not going to want to cover some of it just because. We may not have watched the whole thing. We might have skimmed through it just because there's no fans.
Yeah.
So it's definitely interesting to think. I mean, the UK pay-per-view, that place is probably going nuts.
Oh, I would think so.
It's going to, it should be good to go back and watch anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's coming for you next week, WWF One Night Only, 1997. Looking forward to that. We hope you enjoyed today's episode on Unforgiven 2004.
Sorry we had to ramble a little bit there.
Yeah,
we were like 20 minutes in. We're like, oh boy, we try to give you a half hour, a little bit over, a little under, not a big deal. But like when we looked at the thing, it was like 22 minutes. We're like, oh boy, we better stretch it a little bit.
Yeah.
So, sorry if you fast forwarded through this part like we were doing for the WWF shows.
Yep. So everybody take care. We'll be back next Saturday at 5 o'clock. Until then, I'm Jim Kirk.
And I'm Roland Pulis.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present.